Hi, it's me again, and welcome to a new video on the HCVP channel. Now, as I promised in my video, which was the introduction to the channel, my next couple of videos, including this one, will be mostly on the coverage of SHRM18, which is the annual HR Conference and Exposition that happened in Chicago last week. We just happened to have wrapped up the conference a couple of days ago, and this is my feedback on the conference in general. This is what I'll be sharing with you today. What are things I liked about the conference, why I would recommend this experience to you, and what are some of the things that stood out to me personally in the conference. So without further ado, let's dig in. I have some notes here. I took them on my phone because it's easier, less messy than having a paper and a pen, and then I can copy these directly and put them on the channel for you guys so that you can see them and read them with me. So usually before the conference starts, we have what we call pre-conference workshops and other courses that happen. So I enrolled in one of these courses, and it was about leadership development. Now, these are very specific courses about certain things, and the one I attended was actually very good. So I'll have a link below to the provider. Maybe they run this course. I would highly recommend it, specifically if you develop your own leadership programs in your organization. So it was very useful. I'll not dig into the details of that, because usually these things are copyrighted, and mostly I don't want to get into legal trouble. But again, I'll have a link and you can have a look yourself at the content. So it was mostly just a glimpse. It was mostly about developing leadership programs, the how-to from scratch all the way up to senior leadership, and how to manage expectations, how to manage things in the program. So it was very beneficial. Then next is one of my favorite sessions, one of the sessions I attend every year. It's called the 5 Priorities of HR Department of One. These sessions are usually run by Jennifer Kearns. She's the one who develops them. She has a community of HR departments of one. If you don't know what that means, we'll get into that in a separate video. So again, I will not talk about this session because I have a very special video that I'll have on this specific topic, HR department of one, and I have a surprise in there as well. So stay tuned for that. Moving on Sunday, which was the first day of the conference, we had the first keynote. Usually the keynotes, they run around the same time as other sessions. I make sure to attend them because keynotes are very important, and usually they have guest speakers that are amongst the top keynote speakers in the world. So we kicked off the session with something very interesting. I don't know how much you know about Kechi. Kechi was on America's Got Talent. She has a very interesting and impressive and touching story. She shared her story with us on stage, and she said, some amazing things. And the thing that stood out to me the most in what Kechi said was something along the lines of, like, if you have a tragedy in your life, if you had something big happen to you that affected your life, snap out of it. Don't let it be something that holds you back and, whinge and put yourself in a cocoon over it and hate the world and hate your life. Do something with your life. Use this as an opportunity to expand your world, to expand your horizons, to learn new things about yourself and do things that you didn't even think were possible for you to do in the past. So again, I thought this message was really powerful. If you meet Kechi, if you look at the video that I linked below, you'll understand coming from her why this is so powerful. And Kechi, you're amazing. I mean, amazing start of the conference. SHRM did an excellent job including her, very inspirational. So after Kechi left, we were introduced to John C. Taylor, who's the president and CEO of SHRM, and he introduced the conference theme for this year, which is something I believe was very simplistic and very strong, very powerful, straight to the point. Expand your world. Simple, as simple as that, guys. Expand your world. What does that mean from an HR perspective? It means we have struggled in the past to secure a chair at the board, to be part of the leadership community of our business. We didn't have the credibility. Now we have all of these. We're past that. It's time to awe people. It's time to show them something new, something innovative, something creative. It's time to take the organization forward. and contribute to the best of our knowledge, and let people contribute to the best of their knowledge by creating new ideas, developing new stuff, and driving the business forward and helping the business achieve its strategy. He talked about a book called Chasing the Lion, and it's very interesting. Basically, the lion is what you're afraid of, and you're chasing what you're afraid of, kind of. So you're getting out of your comfort zone, and he used that analogy to say that we have to get out of this comfort zone. Now we know that we have different expectations from the business, from the CEOs, and we need to be up to the level. We need to drive things forward in the organization. So again, chasing our lion. What is your lion in your organization? So that, uncomfortable space, out of your comfort zone, what is it? How can you make the most out of it? This is what you need to look for. Some of the issues that Johnny said we will be tackling in the future and we'll be focusing more on going forward in HR are diversity and inclusion, for obvious reasons. The more diverse we are, the more creativity, the more innovation we can drive. Elevation of the profession. It's our duty as HR professionals to elevate our profession. We are no longer solo players. We need to build a community, a vibrant community, which is part of why I built this channel. It's for us guys to get around and help each other and expand our horizon, expand our world, and build this profession together. Again, rebuild it actually to be more competitive, more compelling for the business. Then he talked about developing talent and uplifting skills. Now, developing talent and uplifting the skills of the population is very important because, again, this is us and the business. This is the people of the business. How can we drive innovation if we don't develop the skills in the business? So this is our responsibility. It's a shared responsibility that we have with the business leaders. So again, uplifting skills and lead workforce skills development. So we need to take the lead. Meaning, you can always say, oh, the managers have to do this, have to do that. But you're the one, you're the catalyst, you're the HR, you're the HC person, you're driving this forward. You're making it happen in your organization. That is, my friends, our responsibility as an HC community. How do we make the most out of our human capital? How do we uplift their skills so that they're better suited to achieve the organizational aspirations over the coming few years and the future in general? Another thing he said, one of our key challenges will be tougher people issues, building trust, bigger thinking, and being human. These are some of the biggest challenges that we'll be facing as an HR community. After Johnny C. Taylor's keynote, we had our main keynote, who was former governor of Florida, Jeb Bush, and he shared his experience during the time he was a governor. Now, the things that stood out for me from Mr. Bush's speech were anticipating the challenges and addressing them. So in the past, people, specifically in politics, people make promises and they look at what happened and say, hey, we can improve this and that. But what he focused on is, okay, we addressed some of the issues, and he had a lot of success. He has a book that he published on all the things that he drove during his time in the office. And actually, there are some pretty amazing achievements over there, specifically on the immigration front. And, he talked actually about this even in the conference. So I think some very big milestones he hit. And that was basically by what he's saying here as anticipating the challenges and addressing them. So not just waiting for things to go wrong, seeing what could go wrong and address them even before they happen. He mentioned that unemployment in the US is currently at its lowest level since the year 2000. So that's for 18 years. And he asked for reforms in immigration policy to address the talent shortage and legacy vacancies. These legacy vacancies, Bush is saying that they're actually a lost opportunity for the economy in the US. These are key positions that need to be filled, and not filling them because of the current, immigration policies is having a negative impact on possible earnings for the businesses. So again, very powerful, very liberal, I have to admit. I mean, it was very bold, and amidst everything that's happening now with the immigration. He was asking to reform the immigration and accept immigrants again more openly. And he gave Canada as an example, which I thought was very impressive. He mentioned as well some of the things that he didn't go that well. And he said, always ask for feedback, and there's no harm in tracking back if your initiative didn't work. So don't go like, oh, okay, I didn't mean this to happen, or oh, I knew this would happen, but I did it anyway because there's a hidden benefit that you cannot see. None of this crap. He's saying, own it and track back and say, hey guys, you know, it's better to be bold and go out there and take a risk and do something. Okay, it didn't work, maybe we can do it better. How can we do it better? But don't just keep it there and you know, lose an opportunity. And then on the first day, I attended one of the sessions that was talking about performance management, one of the topics I'll be covering in a video separately. But so some of the things that stood for me, the presenter was Michael Fogel, and he mentioned a few things that you should focus on when you do performance management. He said the right questions to ask is, how are you doing on the stuff from our last meeting? How can I help you? That's another thing. What are your current challenges, and what do we need to do before our next meeting? So these are the questions that he mentioned you should focus on when you're doing performance reviews. And I thought these were very powerful. I'll get to that in the separate video that I promised you guys. Now that was for day one. These are my notes from day one. From day two, we started the morning with, I started the morning actually with a keynote speaker. You all know him very well. Adam Grant, if you don't know him, he's a world-renowned keynote speaker. He has published some very interesting book, and his keynote was actually one of the better highlights of the conference. Everything was amazing, but this keynote was specifically very interesting. And he talked about givers and takers. And you know, you can actually go and to his website. I'll have links below to what that means. But some of the things that he mentioned, and I found very powerful, is that culture fit is misunderstood by people. In which sense? So when you go and you look at people in an interview, us being HC people, you look at people who are culturally fit for your environment, for your company. Now, what he mentioned is very interesting. He said you should not be looking for culture fit. You should be looking for something called culture contribution. We'll get into that in a bit and see what that means. And he mentioned that part of this culture fit is the Googliness. So he was doing some work for Google, and they were actually trying to recruit some people, and they were referring to the culture fit as Googliness. And he mentioned how everyone he spoke to had a different idea of Googliness, because basically what they're trying to look for is mini them. So I want a mini me who understands exactly what I'm saying. If I'm from this department, I want somebody who thinks the same way. So while Googliness sounds very fancy and nice, it wasn't actually serving purpose, because he found out that people are just having different expectation on what Googliness is depending on where they are in the organization. So it wasn't really a real indicator of the culture. He said, look at how you can incorporate your strength at the job even if they're not in your JD. This is very powerful, guys. So I work, for example, I work in HR. I worked in an HR senior role for some time in an organization here. And you know, if I look at the skills I was using maybe 15 to 20% of my skills. There were lots of other skills I didn't have access to or I couldn't use because I didn't really consider this question. How can I use my other skills, the things that I'm really good at, that are not part of my JD, to uplift my organizations and organization, make them part of my contribution? Look how powerful that is. Now, imagine the talents you have for people, the skills that they have that they might not be relevant for the job. What he's inviting us to do is to sit down and think about these with our employees and see where they can add value. Maybe we can create some new extra additional value for the company. So very powerful stuff. So again, going back to the culture bit, hire for culture contribution instead of culture fit. So let's explain that. So going back to our example of googliness, what he said is that you don't really want clones of people in your organization. That's not culture. What you want is that people who can live your values and add their own twist to it. Now, this is very interesting. Everyone has a value, additional value to contribute. So he's saying enrich your culture, basically. Have people who would live your values but still would enrich your culture with new stuff. So don't judge just firmly on what you know and what you feel comfortable with, but look at the possibilities out there. Look at what this specific person, this particular individual can bring to your business. Very powerful stuff. Givers and takers ratio has a very interesting ratio. So givers are the people who are willing to give freely. They want to share, they want to advance the organization, they have no bitterness in them. They want to share, they want to be part of something bigger, and they teach their colleagues. They don't keep things to themselves. While takers, they're those who are feeling entitled, they're bitter. If things go south, they whinge, they go into this depression, and they actually drag people down with them. Now, the interesting statistic he shared, he said the ratio for takers, the harm they do against the good done by givers is double or triple. So imagine that. If you have a taker in your business and he's in that vicious cycle of self-destruction and organizational destruction, that person's negativity actually outshines all the good and positive being done by takers. But so one person and the damage they can do to your culture is equivalent to the good 3 givers can do to your organization. Imagine. That's very interesting. So again, do we know our givers and takers in the organization? Do we look at them? Are we protecting the takers? Are we trying to do anything about the takers? Maybe get them out of it, snap out of it, shape up or shape out? What are we doing? So very interesting. Building an upwards challenge network. So that's a very interesting concept. So what he's saying is that don't just settle for the norm. When you're, working on stuff, you want to create this atmosphere of creativity and innovation. So that's what building an upwards challenge network is. So surround yourself with people who know better than you. Hire them, and have them as part of thinking tanks and see what you can do together. Very important stuff. He mentioned a sentence that we all say, don't bring me problems, bring me solutions. And he said, while the purpose of that sentence is pretty obvious, you want to encourage people to find solutions, it's very negative the way it's said, because it doesn't encourage a culture where people feel comfortable to come to you with problems if they're stuck. So basically, you're not allowing people to come to you if they have a problem. And you never think about these things. I'll get into a separate video where I'll explain a bit into neuroscience and what happens in a relationship between a manager and an employee. And this actually falls right in line with that. If you don't encourage people to come to you and speak about problems by saying things like that, you could be intimidating and you could be missing out on issues, and they'd rather not give them to you and just forget them and move on instead of trying to find a solution. So very important stuff. One of the cultural things that he talked about, very interesting thing about one of his clients, they had this rule that said nobody has the right to have a critical opinion without speaking up about it. How powerful is that? Imagine. So this is a way to encourage people to speak up, to be bold. And what he's saying is basically culture it's very important for culture to be bold, to go out there and speak up if you notice something that is wrong. And specifically when you're in an HC position, this is an accountability. This is something that you must do. It should be part of your DNA. But again, if you have that don't bring me problems, bring me solutions mentality, it could be intimidating. So what he's saying is that this company actually, they mastered how to get you to be that bold person. So they didn't just say be bold, they said nobody has the right to have a critical opinion without speaking up about it. Imagine how powerful that is. It means if you think there's something wrong, you better say it. If we know that you're, having some ideas or you have some observations and you're not sharing them, you're in trouble. So actually they're telling you it's a problem if you don't bring them up. So you don't have an opinion unless you voice it out. One thing he mentioned about Google as well is they have a doc problem box, and this is owned by the leadership team. So actually what happens is that people throw in all sorts of stuff into the box, and it's the leadership actually of Google that goes into looking into these things and looking into these problems and own them. Actually, they own the problems, they own the solutions. So each member of the leadership team takes his part or her part, and they have accountability towards fixing the specific problem. He shared something very funny, very interesting. I don't know if there are samples online. If I find them, I will post them as part of the description. He had this mean feedback video thing that happened. These mean feedback videos, they're actually, if you have a suggestion box and people just drop in all sorts of random stuff, or you have an email where you talk about everything that you don't like about the organization. The interesting thing is that they take the meanest and worst feedbacks they receive, and actually they shoot a video and they talk about the feedback about themselves. So in this example, Grant himself received a feedback from one of his students saying that he has this tendency to say a couple of sentences and he repeats them the whole time. So there wasn't too much meaning to the video, well, not to the video, to the comment per se. They were not deal breakers. There was nothing with the quality of education or saying something about Grant himself, but it was mainly a criticism that, oh, you do this, I don't like it. So it was very funny the way he read the comment and then used these two sentences that he uses most of the time, and it was very funny. And he kind of encourages people this way, saying like, it's okay, say whatever you want to say, and it's done in a very fun way. So again, something really amazing that stood out. He talked about avoiding organizational confirmation bias, which is very important because, again, going back to the Googliness of Google, basically, that confirmation bias, we want to see, we want to hear from people what we already think the organization is about, what we already think is the right thing. This is when you kill diversity and inclusion. This is when you kill opportunities to improve and create and innovate. So again, avoiding organizational confirmation bias. So whatever you think you stand for as an organization and you want people to just fall in their place, think again. This is how you bring richness to your culture, and this is how you diversify your organization and get new ideas and new juices flowing. One other thought is build a bridge to something that is already there when you come up with a new creative idea, as it might help you pitch the idea and adopt it. So what he's saying basically is, what that means is that if you created something and you're trying so hard to sell it, but nobody's buying it because you don't have that much credibility, especially if the idea is too bold or too big to be true, but you have that confidence, that this will work, but you're afraid that it might not sell well with the leadership or the organizational executives. So what he said is that try to draw comparisons from things that happened in the past with other people who have subject matter expertise. So for example, say, okay, so basically what I'm suggesting here is what Apple did with the iPod when they did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, drawing these examples and these comparisons as he says, strengthen your cause and strengthen, you know, the validity of what you're trying to achieve. So again, very powerful stuff. Create new channels for knowledge sharing. So don't limit yourself to, you know, the norm. Go out there, again, as part of the conference theme, you know, expand your world. Try to be more effective. Come up with more solutions to share ideas, to share knowledge through different platforms, be it videos, you know, social media, internally in your company in a way or another, flyers, posters, whatever. Try to create knowledge in your organization, because only a knowledge organization in our current times will survive to make it to the next century, or the next few years actually, if we don't want to go that far in the future. So that was about Adam Grant, and these are the things that stood out most from his keynote. I know we took some time on these, but I think it was one of the conference highlights. And guys, you missed it. If you weren't there, you really missed it.